All right. Yes. Okay. Things are working. That's good. Welcome. I think honestly, the only thing I'm wondering about. Yep, the mic is wrong. Oh. Okay.
There we go. There we go. All right. Now we should be good. Yeah, just getting a couple of extra things together, of course. I think the plan is I'm just going to click on all the recent drafts and pick the ones I think are best. Let's get into a few things. Number one, of course, I'm going to drop a couple links in here. I think if you have any interest, let's actually do it this way. Let's do it this way. Okay. Let me just play the 10-second clip so I know where the 10-second clip is now that I got this fixed. And I think my Wi-Fi fixed. I'm going to pause for 1 second, play a 10-second intro from not this video, and then I'm going to start because I'm going to try to actually edit this into a cohesive video, and I'm going to actually kick it off now that I'm good. Okay. All right. Welcome back to Best Puck season. We are, of course, it's Monday, September 9th when I'm recording this. And it's Monday Night Football tonight, so I'm sure we're not going to get a lot of viewers in here, and that's totally fine. Definitely leave any comments along the way as I go through. I'm going to primarily be sharing my screen with a bunch of various things. So, but I was going to get into, and now that we're getting a few people in here, there's probably about 4 things I pull up every single time. It's probably going to continue to grow into more things as time goes on. Um, Still, we're just getting into training camp. We're starting to see some stuff, nothing crazy, but today we see Victor Arvidsson, skating with the Oilers, and we're kind of starting to see players that we maybe are questioning that seem to be healthy. That'll continue. We're just going to continue to see where they slot in, how healthy they really are when things progress. So no real big news notes right now. Draisaitl re-signed, but anything of that nature we'll talk about tomorrow on the mainstream. This is just going to be primarily 40 minutes on strategy. I'll start by just showing the most important thing that I have up with every draft, and that is, of course, the Puck Luck rankings. Let's put this in this mode and zoom in a little bit more. Um, I think that there's probably just some reason to go over this in more detail. I've organized it a little bit, but in reality, I feel like the order's just fine the way it is. I don't really worry about it too much. Again, this works for me really well because I want to spread my exposures out between a lot of these guys. But some guys will naturally get drafted a little bit earlier than others. Um, I'm actually putting Miko and Kaprizov just above Brady, for example. But it's a good rule of thumb. It's good to see a projection, something unbiased. I'm high on Brady, and this kind of 42 goal mark is also, a bit high in the projections from Puck Luck. But again, these are unbiased opinions. It's projecting, shots, hits, blocks, etc. All of the different categories into the best puck points. Um, and then I also love looking at the upside. Just when I'm trying to make a selection, just control F. I look up different players, etc. Kind of the whole time I'm drafting. Uh, I'm also I'm going to continue to organize. I'm going to color code it everything. I honestly meant to do that before I got started today. Haven't really needed to yet, but I think it'll look better color coded and just kind of have this up when we're drafting live. This is of course paywalled, but the good rankings is a good rankings. I do have the Athletic as well that I'm using. Just kind of bouncing off both of them, seeing if there's any players that maybe stand out in their model. Like I truly believe that what Dom has put in is not as much as we have put into the math behind our stuff, but it's still very good and he's still very smart. Can't prove that, of course. I don't know exactly what went into it. He describes it in decent detail, though. I think that this is the most obviously cohesive for Best Puck, but I think even if you change the rules of Dom's to make it fit, it also still like holds true. So this is just certainly far and away one of the most useful resources in the space. And again, we're going to have more articles coming, but I think you could use this in a few different ways. Number one is just using the general rankings to find anything that stands out. There are certainly players, even though this is in pretty good ADP to start, there's definitely players that are a bit above where they get drafted. And as continue to use them and hopefully we get them overlaid soon, you will find pretty quickly that, yeah, it's actually there's more, I guess, players that you'll find down the list that'll really help. The other thing that I always have up, and I'm just, where is she? I sent it right. Oh, I sent it in a group. Hold on, I'll find it. But other things with this while I'm searching for something is I think that going to the end and looking at the pre-adjusted ranks is probably my number 2, which I think I'm just going to completely move this column over, just to kind of keep it in like have this column nearby, just to see like it helps players stand out like Jack Eichel, who I think are really important to help stand out. Like he's not the only player that's important to say. There's a ton of really, really good players that I kind of want to get overexposed to. He's definitely one of them, and this is the reason behind it. So yeah, I don't think I need to go into too much more detail. I'm going to check for questions in just a second. Let me just pop. This is the next thing I wanted to show. Oh my God, nope. Open. Image a new tab. Any questions so far? Doubtful. Click the wrong tab. Great. Okay. Now, this is in the Discord at all times. I think we have it tagged and pinned, and there's more that I know Michael Mann has already put together and other stuff. So just keep an eye and following along with him. But I use this every single draft as well. This is just, and again, just DM me on Twitter. You have obviously my Twitter handle. Just give me a DM if you want this. This is the regular season games played. Round 1 broken up by weeks, round 2 broken up by weeks, and finals broken up by weeks. It's most important for goaltending. Like I don't really care about anything when it comes to goalies other than getting as many starts as possible and making sure that I'm not completely leaving myself out to dry when it comes to the finals. Like Igor is still one of the best goalies in the league, but he has 5 games in the finals. If I take Igor, even though I love Sam Harrison, I'm just not doing it. I may have done it early on before I really started making this a point. But some goalies like Ottinger are almost impossible to get with a guy like Igor. Other goalies like Montembeault aren't that hard. Olmark, not that easy either, but it's doable. I'm definitely trying to put that together when I can, just to give myself a little bit more of a cushion when it comes to the finals, because like Igor only getting potentially 5 starts in the finals could hurt you. And if you don't make up for that in some way, you might just end up losing and just not really giving yourself the best chance to win, even if Igor is ultra successful, which definitely is in the range of outcomes. We've seen it before. So just a really good tool. And I actually like wrote down all the teams, and I normally like put it on a piece of paper before I start drafting of like, these are like, the finals and whatever. But you can also take a look, like if you take Ottinger, great for the finals, bad for the second round. Like who's a player, you don't have to go to the extreme on this, but like, let's take a look. I mean, Saros is tough, but again, there's a lot of 7 and 7s, and you can kind of mix in a UPL or anyone else just to try to spread the exposure. I think goaltending is really good. I'm actually going to get into a 4 goalie draft that I did. I think it's complete. Yeah, it should be complete. I'm gonna get into that. I might just get into that first. I think that's the first one up I wanted to go over, because I do think it was a really interesting lobby. Is this the one? No. Hold on. Let me search, but I'll keep I'll keep this up for now. Is this? No, I can't like see it on that screen. I'll pull it up. If it's not done yet, I might just. Oh, you know why it's gonna be? It is done. All right, I'm gonna do this one first. This is my only 4 center draft, and I think it's interesting enough to talk about. So let me make sure that I stop sharing and I reshare with the correct window. I want to go over this draft because number 1, the first thing you'll notice, and this is again, there's not a lot of badges in this lobby. I think this was a slow, if I recall correctly, and I started from the back. Okay, so starting from the 12 hole, this is truly, I think, one of the ways I'm going to be drafting quite often out of the back. If Leon gets to me, if Jack Hughes is there, I'm going to mix him in for sure. Neither of them got to me, and that's totally fine. I do think Jack Hughes probably should lie in this general ballpark. Neither get there. I think that's going to be pretty common, especially as time goes on. So I do think that starting winger goalie is the way you want to do it. I went pretty heavy here, and it's not to say that I had zero interest in centers. It's just that, as you can see, this draft was punishing anyone that wanted to get ahead on centers. So the first round, like I just said, let me let's zoom in one more. Now, yeah, there we go. Yeah, give me one more. No, this is good. But anyway, I obviously didn't get Jack or Leon. I'm gonna mix him in. I could have gone Kale McCarr, but I just decided let's get ahead on winger. Matt the Truck is the guy that slips here. I do want exposure to him. I know the upside. He didn't quite score the goals last year, but that can absolutely flip on a dime. So I went, going to take Matt, and I decided, screw it. I'm going to take Nylander as well. I have him, pretty high up, not crazy high above the rest, but definitely higher above the rest. The big faller for me was Cole Caulfield in the third round. So I, not as slow as you're not. I actually just queued up. I think I'm in the next like 5 waiting lobbies for slow drafts right now. I got it to 80, so I have 70 left, which is about what I wanted at this time. Anyways, though, so went with Cole Caulfield, the faller, and Vasilevsky, which was my best goalie available at this pick. Just Ottinger goes, and I was considering taking, Pedersen, maybe Bedard. But when you get Caulfield and Vasilevsky, I just thought that was a lock. I then thought to myself, all right, at 60, like I think I'm going to take a center. I should be able to get one of Eichel or Thompson. I'm not too worried about it. Yeah, I couldn't even get Tim Stutzel. Like I wasn't going to take him probably at 59. It's not like it's outside his range of outcomes, but I just decided screw it. Tippett's the faller here. I almost went Cairo. I really do think I have Cairo higher than Tippett, but again, I just sort of decided let's go with the like ultra upside shooting winger, and grab the goalie. I get 2 elite starters, as I just showed you. Ottawa has a really favorable final schedule. Tampa's pretty spread out, but Vasi should see a number of the starts. At that point, of course, I went full 180. I get Wyatt Johnston and Miro for the split. This was a draft, and again, this is the adjustment you need to make on the fly. When centers are flying off the board, and you see Larkin go early, Aho go early, it's kind of I would say adjacent to quarterbacks in the NFL when you're drafting in best ball, which thank God is over. Like eventually you might have to bite the bullet and go up a little bit, especially when you're at the turn and you can naturally correlate like this. I think that's totally fine. Like Wyatt Johnston is going to go earlier than 84 in maybe 15 to 20% of lobbies just because people don't know what they're doing. So I don't think I'm getting like an all-time high on him either. Like this isn't probably his actual range, but whatever, right? I didn't want to go 0 centers at this point. The only goalie I liked was Darcy. I considered it, but again, I just kind of felt like no sense. Wingers were pretty thin. I just went with this at the turn. I then was like, pretty in need of continuing the center trend. I didn't want to let Suzuki Caulfield get away from me. So I grab it here. I went Borensky thinking I could probably grab something at the end to go with it at wing. It didn't work out in my favor, but I didn't really need to. I took Jake DeBrusk and Cutter. These are 2 guys I'm super high on. I considered Velarde. This is kind of the 3 I was down to. Again, I went with upside. I think that Velarde has a lot of upside, but I really do think the moon and back of Cutter Gauthier, like I think that his, ceiling is very, and again, it might not hit this year. And if it doesn't hit this year, it doesn't hit this year. I'm loaded at wing. At that point, grab my third goalie. Again, I'm super high on Harrison. I have a ton of starts in the finals. I hope that he can get a lot of run. I feel very good about that right now. We'll see in training camp. I don't think it's going to be 65 starts. I think it could be 55, maybe 50. And that's so many, especially this late in the draft. So I'm going to be super high on him. And then at this point, as you're kind of seeing, this is one of my only one of 2 drafts where I went 4 centers because I did end up grabbing McTavish. I just felt like there was no point when Schmaltz and Marchenko were gone. I could have maybe gone, but like, I don't know. I just kind of felt like, what's the point? I could take Cutter and McTavish, get this sort of correlation that I'm coveting, especially when it comes to building for upside. Like, it feels like there's some debate of like, oh, is it going to be Cutter or McTavish? We're like, it could be both. I don't really know why we're assuming they couldn't be correlated and pretty high capacity, as Matt's kind of pointed out. It's not like Mason McTavish is just obviously like a 40 goal scorer. That's his range of outcomes. He could just be a decent rate shooting, 25 goal scorer. And if he has the right line mate that can score 35, 40, they could get there together. So I ended up going a different route. But again, it's really just playing to the room. And in this draft, center did thin out and stop getting over like completely nuked. There's a lot of smart drafters in here, even some of the, like I know some of the people that even don't have a badge. We Tom's in the Discord, Paul's in the Discord. There's some good drafters in here. No one went completely off the reservation even. but center went super early. And when that happens, I don't think it's wrong to go for center because I think I still got an unbelievable amount of upside. It's like if I draft a guy like, Matthew Nyes, for example, a guy that went here at 188, like if he's scoring multiple weeks, I'm definitely not advancing. Like this team is totally dust because that means I completely failed with all of my draft capital. So I do think when you go with something like this, totally fine to grab 4 centers. I did think I had enough at defense with Miro, Wierenski, and Rasmus Anderson that I didn't need to get carried away. So yeah, that's kind of draft one. And again, playing to the room and taking a 4 center build, which is not something I commonly do. Um, Other things about this lobby, again, play to your just play to the room. I think that's really the main genesis of this. I think it's when when you're drafting in a way that you don't have any other position outside of goalie and center through pick 61, you're all the way down to 84. That's really when you're opening the door to a different build. Like the 3-7-3-3 is the best. It doesn't mean it's going to win. That's just the way you got to look at it. So if you draft 150 teams, I think it's very, smart, honestly, to maybe at least mix in a tenth of them, 15, that aren't a 3-7-3-3. Try to capture upside in a different way. Try to get, a combination that maybe someone else might not have just because you went a different route. Again, just ask any questions along the way. But that one I felt really good about. Honestly, it felt like one of those drafts where you do something different. And I honestly felt like I was rewarded for doing something different. Like I don't really know how else to describe it. I'm still going to look for that 4 goalie team because I did want to talk about it. Oh, there it is. Okay. Let's make this full screen. Let's see. Did it work? Oh, it's working. So this is getting to the on the water, going over kind of the idea of, you know, starting with 0, drafting 4. And I do it again from the 12 hole. Didn't even realize that. This time I did actually go with the Chuck McCarr again. Just not something I'm more indifferent than most people. Like I'm using the rankings as, I guess it's like using it as gospel instead of scripture. I don't know. I'm not that religious, but we'll go with that, right? Like I agree with a lot of the sentiment, and I'm not going off the reservation and saying like, well, at 13, I actually think Marner is better. Like I'm not getting crazy. Um, I'm definitely sticking into a window, but like to mix and match a little bit more. And this was kind of, I think, a perfect situation to get different because of going McCarr instead of going with a winger. So I'll kind of explain deeper. Let's go keep going with it. Again, another situation where Leon and Jack Hughes go. Another situation where it's not quite badgeless by any stretch of the imagination, but we will see. I believe in this one had a couple weirder. No, everyone was pretty normal, I think, actually, in this one. Looking at it again, I don't know why I thought someone went 2 defensemen, someone went, 4 centers from the 1 hole, but nothing too crazy. But let's just keep it going here. The big faller, Alex Ovechkin, that was never getting by me. But this time I really decided to just take the center. Again, I let JT Miller get by me last time. I got the big faller in net. That just didn't happen this time. Vasilevsky went 31. Could have gone with like a Boldly. Could have gone, there's a couple wingers here I like probably the same, if not more than JT Miller. But I kind of felt that again, like none of the main centers got to me here. And I just didn't trust that Eichel, who I can think will continue to rise, would get to me again. So instead of kind of painting myself into a hole, which I've done before, which again, learn from your mistakes. Like the one hole I've driven myself into is when I don't take that goalie here, assuming or praying that Omar, Georgiev, like one of these guys gets back to me. It just doesn't happen that often. So this is, I think, kind of a situation where I didn't take the goalie here because it didn't get to me. I then got to 60, and instead of forcing in Binnington as my number 1, this is where I kind of decided let's try to get unique. Let's not force a goalie that I think is maybe a tier down and probably belongs with these guys. Let's get into this. Let's go with the 4 winger start, the 1 defense, the 1 goal, the 1 center, and then build from there. I was hoping to maybe, yeah. No, yeah, I did consider Rock Besser at 70. Like he went at 70 though. I actually thought about just going Kyrou Besser and just like I don't know how often that's getting correlated. I feel like it's more unique than you'd think just because the winger avalanche kind of not even avalanche, the winger like tier list or the tier zone is just sort of like dusty after Besser, and you feel like a lot of not a lot of non-wingers in a row here. Um, it's just kind of hard to get. I do think that's something I'm going to mix in at some point, especially when you get JT Miller to fall. Like you get him at in the 50s or not the 50s. Oh my god, in the 40s at some point. Like maybe jumping up, considering just grabbing him, but it is tricky. But anyways, I went with Kyrou, my boy. 25 days until the NHL is back and Konechny. So at this point, again, you're seeing I'm through the 6th round without a goalie. That's one of my main rules I don't want to break. And I just absolutely was not letting it get to round 7 without one. Um, I was kind of hoping to get a guy like Patrick Kane in the mix here to go with Larkin, but I wanted to kind of continue my bet on, one goalie and then go with a guy like Dylan Larkin, just try to build up a better center team in this situation because I kind of at this point I thought I might go 4 goalies. And when that happens, I just don't want to get completely buried at center. I don't know. I really don't know how I could else describe that. Like, I guess it's like I wasn't going to let it be any purple here in the last 4 rounds. Like I wanted it to be done so I could still have 3 centers and feel good about those 3 centers rather than like eating a tough center build, hoping JT Miller gets there every week, which I do think is kind of a little bit trickier of a I think his ceiling's really high, but his floor is a little bit hit or miss. He's not one of the highest rate shooters in the world. I know he gets there in kind of all categories, but like if he's not getting points in a week or something, I do worry about that being a little bit tricky, especially at how much capital you're paying for him. So again, this was a very conscious decision to get my centers done early to go along with these goalies. And another part of that is I really do trust defense having quite a bit of ceiling at the end. Um, which you see, I took 2 of my highest ceiling players at the end here. So the position that really got nuked was defense, but I had Kel McCarr, and I still got my 2 probably favorite late defensemen who, again, they don't need to outscore Kel McCarr often. They just need to be in the ballpark, and maybe I even, on the best case scenario, if they don't outscore him, is still get into the utility if they can have a few goals in a week. And Thomas Harley is one of the best goal scorers from the point in the world. So totally love that pick. And again, I do think my winger is where I was strongest early. I was really, really happy with getting this Larkin Kane, just in case it correlates. Even if it doesn't, I think the power play will be pretty strong. I get Ingram, I get Decord, I get Marchenko. I felt really good about just going 6 there. I felt really good about defense, and I grabbed one more good starter. I think Vladar will get a lot of run early. I think, if they're not very good and he's not playing well, that could end up being a 0 later on. But at the very least, I gave myself, at least one goalie with a lot of start equity that should be in a playoff race, and then 2 guys that have a chance. I did make a pretty big effort here to get a guy like Connor Ingram. I did have him over Cam Talbot. Again, I think there's 4 goalies there in Detroit. I get betting on an upside, but I'm way more. I think there's just way better chance that Utah's actually good. I talked about it a little bit with Jay and Matt. Like I do project Utah to be a lot better defensively. It's not just Sergachev, although he's a huge part of that. Like I think in general, this team will just get a little bit older. And I do think that they'll start to just defend better in front of Ingram, who played really well with not as good of defense as he's going to be next year. So I feel really good about him. Just like I went up a little bit to get him over a couple other guys. You can see there's no goalies taken between Talbot and Decord, my next goalie in. He fell a little bit, which is really helpful. But 2 goalies that are in teams that like last year, for example. I mean, Seattle was coming off a 2nd round playoff. I think they only got better, getting a new coach. Again, like it's one of those situations where you kind of got to bet on guys that if they start the year, which both should, and they do well, then they could run with it and actually get you back on track to catch the guys that have, Swayman, Vasilevsky, Ottinger, et cetera. Like you need to go with guys, I think in this exact window right here, these are the 2 guys I think I'm the highest in the middle. So when you go 0 goalies, like these are 2 of the players I like the most. I think Harrison's the other. I would have taken him at 156, honestly. Like I was like sitting there like, man, if I could get Harrison and Harley, I guess I can't take Marchenko, right? Like I'll just have to wait one more time because I would have really liked him. Other than that, like the Washington goalies split too much. I definitely get taking either of them, especially like, you got Ottinger here, you got Georgiev here, a team in Washington that does defend super well. Both of them could steal the net for stretches at a time. I feel like you just can't bet on that kind of like potential zero, or like, that kind of swinging back and forth when you have taken zero goalies until Darcy Kemper. So intention is everything. I think that you're trying to pick out goalies that should start with the net, and if they do well, carry it on for a long time. There's not a lot down the list. So I think, again, I don't think Dustin Wolf fits that category. Mrazek is debatable at best, but Chicago's pretty freaking bad. Like, I know they have Bedard, but let's get real. Dostal, no way. Gibson, no way. Samsonov, obviously not. Grubauer, again, I'm just betting on Decord. I think Grubauer is probably dusted. Anderson, I don't even think he's a starter in Carolina, and they just will always funnel through, even if they're winning. So, like, it's really hard to find a goalie down the list. And again, I don't even believe in Vladar. I just think he's early starts, and that matters. Like, this is a Calgary team. All of the tea leaves are they had a quiet offseason on purpose. They don't want to move anyone. Everyone's committed to, let's give this a go. Let's see what we have. There's still talent on the roster. There's 30 goal scorers in Sharon Govich from last year. There's a 40 goal scorer 2 years ago in Kuzmenko. Let's give this our best go. That's why I'm betting on Vladar in the last round, because in the, I don't know, 30% that this team catches some fire to start the year, you know what I mean? Like, what are we looking at here? We're looking at a guy that goes in the last round that gets 55, 60 starts. And even if, Dustin Wolf can get more net than maybe right. I mean, this is a minimum salary signed 2-way contract goalie. Other than that, who do they have? Logan Cooley? You know what I mean? It's just kind of a situation where it's like, that feels like the right guy to bet on. And that's the type of player I'm trying to bet on. And I know you're going to be kind of projecting this peak scenario, but it's pretty easy to see where that could come from. And if you have any questions about it, or you ever have a goalie, you're like, what do you think about him? Right? Like, I don't know who that could really be down the list other than those guys. Like, there might be someone that didn't get drafted or I'm missing, but I don't see anyone else. I mean, you could try to argue Askarov. I just cannot imagine a world like this is a goalie that's never seen NHL run in a high capacity. So just like, when is he going to be a guy that gets, an exorbitant amount of run right away? All right, I want to do a draft that I started. Okay, here. This draft almost is too good. I almost feel like I'm cheating by showing it, but you know what? It's my YouTube channel. I should look good. And this is just a draft that everything. Oh, let me just read. I wasn't reading the draft. Yeah, I like this build. Thank you. Okay. First spot, I am 8 picks without a center. Yeah, I mean, I think you could. So sorry, pick one up. Yeah, I think you could definitely get there with. So again, basically the question is, I haven't picked a center in 8 rounds. I mean, I probably have examples of that. I definitely think you should just make a conscious effort to at least get 2 before you get to, like, the end of the 12th round. Like, just try to force it in there, maybe. Hopefully you get a faller. Like, I just bet on a John Tavares. I bet on a Robert Thomas, and if you can get Busnevich or not, but maybe get Falk with it or something. Like, take a stab at a couple guys in this mid range. And another too high. I mean, Mark Scheifele, I think, is just the perfect guy, especially if you can get Gabe Bellardi or if you have any correlating piece. I think Hurdle too. Like, Hurdle's the guy that I was super duper high on, even in San Jose a couple years ago. I would absolutely take a stab on him as well. You can correlate him with so many players or no one. It doesn't really matter. I think he'll be with Jack Eichel at 5-on-5. So, like, I'm all in on Hurdle. I definitely think you can save it. Just don't maybe go winger and defense at the end here. Like, instead of going maybe like I'd save winger, because I do think there's a lot of wingers at the end. Winger just got deeper because so many more players moved the wing because they are wingers that were centers last year. So, like, wing is deep. I would just be a little bit intentional. Don't be afraid to jump ADP. Don't be a slave to it. So this draft, you're going to see, I'll show you the team at the end too, because it just looks so pretty, but I picked third. And ask any more questions if you have any more questions that come up with that draft. Is it Consigliere? I don't know. We'll go with that. So pick third. 2 absolute behemoths. Sam Olsen, I believe, just took down the dinger, so I just want to congratulate him if he's in here, if he watches this video. Like, huge congrats. I'm almost positive that's what I read today. So really, really cool. But 2 behemoths in the industry, and then some loser named DJ Sabers that no one cares about. I Like Kitties is in here. We have Titans, Tom. A lot of good drafters, a lot of good people that are in this room. You definitely want to be careful, especially when the turn's going to be a nightmare. I get Matthews and I get Marner, the winger that kind of fell right into place. I'm often going to do it. I do think when you're betting on Austin Matthews and you're thinking like he outscores McKinnon and McDavid, it's probably coming along with Marner. I find this is part of the problem with taking Matthews at 1 or 2 is it's so much harder to get Marner because people are just keen to how good Marner can be. So I don't like it as much. I think, and I just like him staying at 3. Like that's better for, I think it's like, I, it's indistinguishable. Like you could look at 10 different rankings and 3 of them could have Matthews, 3 could have McKinnon, 4 could have McDavid. And it's just like, they're all probably pretty close to right. So yeah, I went with Matthews at 3. I would have taken any of them, of course, whoever got there. And then Marner. Kyle Connor, like again, this is not stupid. Like Sam Olsen knows what he's doing. Kyle Connor will certainly be one of my highest exposure players because I like him more than almost anyone else in the vacuum. Count MC did get different here. As you can see, he didn't take a single winger in his first 5 picks. I think this was intentional, of course. Bouchard and Pedersen, a little bit different. Maybe it was auto picking. I doubt it. But again, I think that wing is where there's a lot of depth. So I believe he went, yeah. Oh, no, he really took a center right at the end. But I think, yeah, I went 2 defensemen, which was interesting. And then they're going 8 wingers. So I think that's fine as well. A lot you can do from the one spot, especially when you try to go with some sort of crazy upside. But remember, only one center is going to start, and then you have a flex. So you're kind of saying like, I'm eating my flex pretty early, and whatever. We can get into that later. Not saying this is wrong. I just don't know if I have the balls to do it too often. So Saros was the goalie that fell back to me. I love Saros. I don't think there's a goalie in this league other than maybe Hellebuck, and I put them almost on the same scale. You could maybe also try to squint and say Vasilevsky, but those are the 3 I think that have the clear highest starting potential for the most amount of games. I guess your projection of how many wins may vary. Saros should see a lot of pucks. Burnett plays up tempo. They have a ton of offensive weapons. They're not all the best defensively. I think Saros is going to just, he is, I think, probably still my 2 behind Hellebuck. I just think Hellebuck's a better goalie as far as like, the skill of the goalie. But I think I do have him above Igor. I know Matt differs on that. The playoff schedule kind of gets in the way, but again, pretty indistinguishable between these 3. Again, a lot of smart people, a lot of wingers go, everything kind of working out as expected. I was really considering taking Georgiev if he would have gotten to me. Did not. I would have maybe just gone back to that goalie. Timo is the guy for me here. Him and Verhaeghe, again, pretty indistinguishable between the 2. That's my word of the day, I guess. Didn't really carry their way. Ended up getting Barzal at the turn, 51. Again, the guy that I just have a little bit above the rest. I think him and Kyrou are like pretty close. Him and Tippett, Kyrou, these kind of guys, Keller. I don't think it's that big of a difference. They all have massive upside, but I like Barzal just a little bit more. Took him here. Didn't decide to go 2 centers. Tage, I have below Eichel. I would have gone Eichel personally. Bad Sabres fan, I know, but it is what it is. But I really like the 1 center, 1 goalie, getting 3 wings. Seth Jarvis, the faller, gets here, just decided I'm praying one of these 2 goalies, and Binnington or Adin Hill gets me at the turn. I do think this is the right range for Binnington and these 3 goalies. UPL as well. Kemper goes a little bit early, but again, I think this is all right in the right range. I end up with Saros and Adin Hill, 2 guys that I think have a ton of starting upside. Very clearly, Vegas decided that Adin Hill is their guy. They traded Logan Thompson. I know they brought in Ilya Samsonov, but he's going to see run. Adin Hill might not see 60 games, and any, I think Saros will. But that's fine. Like, he has a lot of win potential. This is still a very good team in Vegas that defends incredibly well. One of the best defensive teams in the league. So I'm hoping he can see some easy wins. At the turn, I took Brian Rust. Again, just kind of the winger that fell to me. I didn't like not having a defenseman yet, but I do think defense is another position as far as a winger that you can push it a little bit. I get Nico Hischier and then Bo Horvat. So you may have noticed I had Matthews, Marner, Timo, Nico, Barzal, Horvat. Just this perfect 2-2-2 build. It didn't go crazy above ADP on any of them. I think almost all of them were at ADP, but that is really what you want to do in this world, if possible. And I don't think it's not a situation either. Like I would say, like, one thing that I've done or like I've seen myself do that I get really mad about is, let's say I didn't get Marner. I feel like sometimes I'll just be like, all right, screw it. Like, I didn't get my main correlation. Correlation stupid. Who cares? Like, don't do that. I have one draft where I had 1 goalie and 1 player together in every position on another team, or every other player was on a different team, which is almost impossible to do if you think about. Like, it was crazy that I even did that. But like, I think sometimes you can almost galaxy brain yourself out of getting back on track. Don't do that. Like if I didn't get Marner, it should have still been in my head the whole way. Like I got Timo, I got Barzell. Let's get their main centers. Let's lock it in. Let's just see. While I'm nervous, I do think if you don't get the top 5 centers, you should wait. Yeah, I'll get into this sort of. You know what? Maybe I'll do one more after this. I do want to get people out of here for Monday Night Football. Let me get into the big change in the dynamic with centers this year and how I'm attacking it. I think that's a perfect way of like phrasing it. But I'm not saying you're wrong. I'll get into that after this one, and maybe I'll look at one more and get into it. But anyways, though, that correlation was a little bit more important to me than defense. Morgan Riley would have obviously made a ton of sense at pick 99, but what are you going to do? I took Nico over him. Sergachev, Hanifin, of course, wanted to get 2 defensemen as fast as possible. I was just going to take a defenseman no matter what with both of those picks. It would have had to have been an egregious faller to not have me take, hopefully a power play 1 all rates guy in Utah. And again, a guy I project to be power play 1 all rates kind of guy into a Hanifin. I grabbed my third goalie. You know it already, Samuel Harrison. I've gone over it like 9 times now. Schmaltz to go with Sergachev. I took him early. I just didn't want to wait on it. And then I was going to take a winger no matter what at the end. I was going to take one of the defensemen. I actually was going to grab Luke Hughes. It's really funny because it's just like, all right, well, this guy's not taking Luke Hughes. But Sam Olsen knows better. So what are you going to do? But I ended up taking Rasmus Anderson to pair with no one instead. What do you again? Like sometimes you just got to eat it. A guy that was one of the top blocks guys in the league. I'm really, really high on him. I just think that he's actually going to get more power play run than Uyghur or around the same. And if he does and finds his kind of goal scoring upside again, then that team is better than people expect, which again, I don't think is a high window of likelihood, but this Flames team is truly not as bad as people think. And like, I do think they're going for it and they didn't sell off. And I think that's kind of like getting cooked in for some reason is that like people just assumed that they were going to sell off and be dust and they just didn't. And then Jack Quinn, who I do think as time goes on, is just going to come right back. Like Jack Quinn was going in like the 15th round, then died again out of nowhere, and now he's coming back again. So I'm going to grab some shares here or there. No one else really felt like a good correlating piece in this window, but I really correlated nicely with this team. Another thing that I think is important, but the biggest note on this strategy of correlating is never jump the line too far. The only player I jumped the line on was really Nick Schmaltz, who, frankly, I could have probably waited one more pick, and I probably could have taken Luke Hughes here at 166 and got him, probably at 171. But I was nervous because I knew Count MC was going winger, 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 winger. He was just, getting dozen chicken wings because the guy went without a winger for the first 5 rounds. We were getting to a point where there really, as you can see, there wasn't a lot of depth left. And I risked it with Luke Hughes instead of Schmaltz. Like it was a risk I had to take. I also noticed he didn't have, again, always read what the person after you is going to do. Like he only had 2 defensemen and he normally builds a 3-7-3-3. So I thought I don't want to let a defenseman get there. There's 2 I like enough. So I ended up, galaxy braining myself because he didn't take a single winger or a defenseman as I had predicted. And sometimes you'll just be wrong. You'll swing and you'll miss on that, but like whatever, I assumed that a winger was going to go here for sure. Only one goes in the 4 picks that I had to wait. So I guess I got, punished for trying to think ahead, but always try to look at what especially when you're anywhere near the turn. Of course, when you're drafting 6th or 7th, what are you going to do? There's so many picks in between you really can't do it. But when you're near one of the turns, use that to your advantage. Whether you start and you kind of get the advantage of getting one of these first centers, or you're at the end, it might even be more valuable for you to really capture every edge. But that's probably one of the biggest strategies and why I wanted to pick. Another reason why I wanted to pick one of the ones on the other end is because I showed a couple from the 12 spot. Like what happens when you're in the other end? Like number one is you got one of your centers. I normally say definitely wait on center. It's not to say you can't do it. 2 incredibly smart drafters did not do it here. These are, of course, guys that have won major contest and will probably, without a shadow of a doubt, be in the finals again this year in Best Puck Classic. So it's not saying you can't take another center. And I think this kind of goes back. Maybe it's the perfect time to bring up this question again. Like, why did they do this? Why are smarter drafters taking centers earlier? And it's just because of, the depth at center has gone down a pretty good bit. A lot of centers like Marchessault, Kempe, that aren't centers. They don't take faceoffs. They don't play the center position. They play the wing, have been moved correctly. And that's, kudos underdog for listening to the community saying, hey, like, this is the reality of life. Like, the NHL website doesn't know what it's doing. So it's not to say that you can't win by waiting on center either. But like, when you wait on center, I think you want to take 4. I think I'm starting to convince myself more and more of it. Like, there's enough centers that I like enough in this. Like, I mean, every one of these centers, I don't think there's a center that got taken other than Ryan O'Reilly. Sorry, Sam Olsen again, that I really wouldn't consider. Like, I would consider almost any of them. And again, I mean, I bag on O'Reilly. He just doesn't shoot. Like, I just expect him to have like 1 shot a game on average. And that's just a guy that I won't be picking, unfortunately. But I do think if you wait that long, you might want to go for it. It's not that you can't still win, because again, there is a ton of upside down the board, but like, the depth is not what it used to be. The 40 goal scoring Adrian Kempe, they're just not the guys that used to be there. Kyrou, another guy, this was a center last year. Like, these are 35, 40 goal score upside guys that have been moved correctly. There's more that you'll see, a couple of guys that might even move back, like Byfield, and we'll reevaluate again next year. But I would very much so be considering taking a center earlier. And when you don't, going forward, I think that my plan is to try, no matter what, to get one of these top centers. And I say top center to include guys like Barkov, Aho, maybe Larkin. I think that's more debatable. But trying to get one of these guys before the end of the 7th round, before the end of the 8th round, I think is pretty vital. But when you don't do it, I'll end up with 10 teams probably with 4 centers, and that's just the way the news is going to go on that. I definitely, I think I started with less of it, just because I think a lot of centers were falling quite a bit further. And now, as more people are joining that don't know what they're doing, or know less, or maybe are just a little bit more, shooting from the hip is probably really the right way of putting it. I think you're seeing more and more people push centers up the board again, and that's concerning. It's probably the way to look at it. Trying to look for a team that I kind of went in the middle on. This one's a middle team. Yeah, this one's interesting. Let's grab this one. Let's do one more. Football starting. Hopefully my lineup's set correctly. I'm sure it is. I didn't change anything. CMC's no, I'm just kidding. I didn't play Christian McCaffrey in stupid football. I'm sure I'm gonna lose anyways. Okay. Let's look at one more team. Any questions? We got a question. For lack of a better term, who are power play 1 handcuffs? Someone who would be promoted to power play 1 with an injury on top. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think this is a really good question, but I don't even think it's handcuff, because like, I think this is a bit more team specific than it is player specific. So I would say what I would do if you have this kind of like you're like trying to figure out which players, I would go to here. Let me just do it. I have a literal computer in front of me that I'm using right now. So why don't I use it? Give me 1 second. Right. Let's go to power play, any condition, individual, and let's do counts. And I'm in the wrong tab. It's okay. We'll go here. I'll move it over now that I'm in the right spot. So this, it's not showing. Good start. Let me show you. This is a good tool. I use this pretty often. This is kind of like the start of every video I do, is going into naturalstattrick.com. There's a lot of different uses for it. So let me, whatever, you can go to this tab or not. But one thing I do pretty frequently is, and what I was actually in by accident, is compare. Oh wait, you know what? Let's stay on track here. So we're gonna go regular season. We're gonna go power play, any situation. We're gonna go all scores, doesn't matter. Individual, we'll just do counts. It doesn't really matter. Okay. It's definitely tweaking out right now. Okay. And then I would say, because what I think you want to do, and you could do it this way too. This is kind of a way to back way into it, is just start with time on ice and just say, okay, like these are players that see a ton of run. And maybe you could start by saying, which teams do I not see? Or what I would do is say, and again, some of this you might have an idea in your head already of like which teams you're thinking about. So again, in this situation, you might be thinking, well, I really want to focus on like finding these random gems. So maybe I'll go to some bad teams because like as you can see, Colorado, Tampa, Florida. Like Florida has a 5-man unit that's maybe the defenseman's going to move, but all the forwards are pretty figured out and they're going to use them quite often. Vancouver's the same. Like a lot of these teams, you kind of know. And a lot of these top players you kind of know. So if you're trying to find players, but what I'm kind of thinking more than anything is going to a team like Detroit, for example. You go by time on ice. Honestly, actually, now that I think about it, this probably should have maybe been rates because you're going to get into a situation where you're seeing players get rewarded for just playing more games. Let me do that. So time on ice, game played. Okay, there we go. So you'll see that like there's a pretty good 9 guys that saw pretty good time on ice per game played. So this team is an example of a team that spreads the ice time out a lot. If there's an injury to any of these players, the other guys probably get a little bit more run. So it's instead of playing a game of like which team could have an injury that forces someone in. And again, you can do that with Colorado. Very like that's an example of a team you could say like when a player came out, but like Colorado's such an absolute mess. It's kind of hard, and there's pretty easy guys to target, but we don't even know who's gonna we don't know when Landeskog is gonna be back, for example. But again, I think Detroit's a really good example of a team that like there are a pretty strong 7-8 guys. Of course, Gostisbehere goes to Carolina. Take him out, which is a big reason why I have Mo Seider kind of up the board a bit more because where's the next defenseman? Oh, he's gone. Oh, okay. So where's the next defenseman? Jeff Petrie. Saw 13 seconds per game. It's kind of these situations where you can automatically kind of see where this is going to go next year, plus which teams are going to do more time on ice per game than others to kind of start to get in your head like where an injury would be the most impactful. And maybe you're saying Detroit maybe isn't that impactful because they're going to spread the wealth still, etc. Of course, keep in mind which I don't know if there's any obvious candidates other than like a lot of it's just like Edmonton. Again like Edmonton and this. Do they ever have a five? Haynes the next guy, but not much. What's one injury going to do? Well, again, you're really going to be making a pretty strong prediction because depending on the injury to which player, it's probably going to dictate which player gets bumped in or out. It just kind of gets into this really tricky situation, in my opinion. So for sure, it's a good question, but I would rather Patrick and play around and try see and how you want to work that out. I personally am going to look for teams that have a more spread out power play to get a bigger role to go along with, because they're going to change them up no matter what. And on most, there's not that many that are completely set in stone. There's pieces that are set in stone, but definitely some moving pieces. Like, I think that the easiest example maybe I could just give of a guy that you could bet on is probably a Dawson Mercer, though, because I do think he's a bit more malleable. Toffoli comes out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, really. Which defenseman? Let's get out of that right now, though. Just focus on the forwards. Like Mercer's a good example of a guy you could bet on right at the end. I think the only problem is he's a center, and that kind of makes it difficult. So, yeah, already going too long. Let's get back on track here. But I will show the one more tool I wanted to show, just because this is something that I talk about a lot, and I did have I think one person ask me about it before. Again, anything. Oh, it's not really showing what I'm doing, but I'll keep it at. I'll do all strengths, whatever. It doesn't really matter. I'll do rates this time. No, I don't want compare. What do I want? I want player index. Player index. That's what you want. Player index, not compare. I want regular season. I'll do all strengths, individual, and rates. And then, so let's just say, for example, right? You started your draft and you picked Kaprizov. If you click teammates, oh my God, I clicked on Kapanen. You pick teammates with Kaprizov because you probably don't care about Kasperi Kapanen right now. Although Kasperi Kapanen looks just like Liam, or is it Murphy? Chesley? He looks exactly like him. Eventually this will load and you'll see how cool this is. Oh my God, they have Belichick on the Manning cut. I mean, I don't even know if I'm going to turn on the game. Like, whatever. I made a lineup, and I will probably wait till the second half, and then I'll take a peek. Yeah, early on, nothing's really happened. I played IU captain. I'm an absolute clown. 0-0. Classic. Holy crap! Will this load? Give it one more second. I got a text I need to answer. Whoa. It's a work text. Okay. This isn't going to load. This is a really good tool. I'm glad I showed it. All right. I'm going to move it to the other screen, and I'm going to refresh and come back and show the draft I wanted to show instead, and then get everyone out of here. I can't believe there's even 6 people still in here with stupid freaking football on. Okay. Yes, this is one from the middle. And I will fix natural stat trick. Okay, so one from the middle, and then we'll get out of here. I think I have one more question, maybe. Well, let's answer. Huberdeau bounce back feels like a good. Yeah, I mean, okay, Huberdeau is interesting. I mean, we have him as a pretty bad projection. I don't mind taking a stab though. Like, I definitely am not saying you can't do it. He's certainly going to be involved. I almost just like Kuzmenko more because, like, when you're right on Huberdeau, you could be more rewarded with Kuzmenko if that's the pairing. Like, I think that's kind of what the reason why I still have 70 drafts open, actually 75 if you include the penalty box, is because I want to get more information before I make a decision on a guy like Huberdeau, Kuzmenko, etc. Because if they pair those two together at 5-on-5 and we think there might be even on the power play, I might take a stab there. If we see it's Coronado, if we, again, like, these are kind of the guys that I'm going to end up factoring in later. And you're not really missing out on anything now because they're not getting drafted. And I definitely want to keep a window open because those are the teams you really want to keep an eye on. Because those are two teams that a team that will spread out the power play wealth either way. But what is the best way of kind of like maximizing a role? That's what I'm going to look into. And I think it's probably Kuzmenko or Coronado, but we'll get back to that. And I do think it's not that Huberdeau couldn't bounce back. It's just like, who is actually going to be the guy that gets the most best puck points at the same position? That's kind of the question I'll be asking myself. I know it's puck talk, but how many people you think are going to victory lapping on Twitter with their, yeah, I mean, dude, the slappies will that's the thing about NFL that's hilarious is like every single take is out there. So like everyone's victory lapping everything. And it's just the stupidest shit in the world. Like, who cares? Like, they literally don't respect the Jets, and neither do I. I went 5-1 San Francisco against the Jets because I just don't care. Yeah, and we already went over Belichick. He's an idiot. Yeah, I went 5-1 with the San Francisco because I don't care about football, and everyone was jumping over themselves to try to bet on the Jets for whatever reason. But let's focus on hockey, the sport that matters. So this was the middle draft. Let me actually see if it did. It works now. And then I will show the last thing. I'll get everyone out of here. The 7 people that are somehow in here. This is right in the middle. I picked 6 out of 12. I have Miko just a little bit above Brady. A draft where Leon goes 8. I actually, within a draft, I think he went 4 today in a slow. So again, a lot of people will be joining with different priors and they'll be jumping the gun on different things. But this is a draft I went 4 wingers off the start. And this is, again, just an example of what we were kind of talking about earlier, like when you didn't take center. And this is kind of the perfect scenario of like, I did not take center. I went 4 and then 2 goalies right away. And then again, Sider, who I'm super high on, I do have him just a little bit above Dougie, which might be sacrilegious of me to do, considering how much I love Dougie. But I have a lot of concerns about Jack Hughes taking over too much of his role coming back from injury. Anyways, Sider, I already have kind of a perfect example. I didn't see I had Sider on this team, but of a guy that I'm actually betting on just because of the power play role, et cetera. I just went over and I gave you the tool to go give that a look if you want to play around and look what teams did last year and et cetera. So 4-2-1. Now, I didn't have anyone to go with Vinny Trocheck, but that was my best center available. I was taking him here. I wasn't waiting any longer. Again, on the flip back, I don't even know who I would have really correlated. Like I missed Barkov, which again, like I could have taken instead of Cider. Maybe you could say I should have, but whatever, it didn't happen. I could have taken Aho. I didn't. They like no one got back to me, and it is what it is. But there's only one correlation that I really had left in my bag, and that was with either Erickson I went before, but really with Kyle Connor, and I don't even think I got that. No, I didn't. So not a good correlation, but it is what it is. I went with Johnston and Trocheck. I am high on Johnston. I mean, the rates are, yeah, and Johnston fell, right? Like, and then again, this is exactly, it didn't really matter the correlation at this point for me. Like, Johnston at 102 is just happening. Like, it is what it is. So I could have gone a lot of different directions in this draft with center and maybe tried to correlate more. I could have punted one more round and maybe taken a Montembeault and locked up goalie, which didn't seem necessary. I could have taken, you know, I guess in retrospect, I could have taken Miro Heiskanen and paired it and then gone center later. But like, I don't think that you couldn't win with Trocheck not correlated. But I do think you're giving yourself a much lower chance to win when you don't get a center or continue to push center down after the 8th round. And Trocheck getting there with Panarin is one thing, but like their finals is bad. Like that's kind of the point here of like I took Vinny Trocheck uncorrelated, but in the finals I want to make sure I'm getting a team like Dallas who has a really good schedule. That's the point kind of why that made sense to me when I did it. And that's because I have that tool up and I'm looking at it. I'm saying, okay, Trocheck, terrible finals. Oh, Dallas, probably the best final schedule. Perfect. Let me mix in Wyatt Johnston, see what I can make happen down the line because I'd rather give myself a center with a ton of upside that slips past ADP just to make sure I'm balancing that as much as possible. Again, LA has a good final schedule. Grab this winger to throw in the mix. Decor, I've already talked about. Peterka, another massive faller in this one. Just couldn't wait any longer on him. And I honestly thought like I was going to go with Dylan Cousins, but I think he went really early. I was going to just do it and say, whatever, I think Peterka second line, I'll just jam that. Who cares? But ended up not working out that way. And I ended up going with Fantilli, who I am really high on. And I do think we'll see really good run. And then, of course, these are the two defensemen that I just seem to get together every single time. Harley, Johnston, we'll see what happens there. Definitely could be a really, really high upside finals type of situation. Like Trocheck carry me there. And then hopefully I can bury all the Panarin drafters in the finals when he only sees 5 games and Wyatt Johnston and Harley see 8. It's sort of like how this team works. And I do think you should be that particular. And like the most weight should be on the finals. That's where $25,000 is. So that's this team. I think I've gone on long enough with everything. Any more questions? Okay, let me show you this tool really quick because I do think it's really interesting. And again, a big part of the video I'm making, and I will get back to this. Oh, not that. And this is sort of like what I'm looking at, if anyone ever wonders. So this is all strengths. You can go to just 5-on-5 or whatever, but just to look at like a guy like Kaprizov is like, who do I correlate him with? And like, there's a pretty clear 4 guys. Boldly was the most. I mean, Peterka doesn't fall to answer this question. Like it just, again, like the guy that falls, if you have good rankings, if you have any semblance of rankings, the guy that falls, you should almost always take because that is giving you the best chance, in my opinion. We go back to some of my first drafts where Peterka was basically a last round pick. That's not happening again. I think Peterka will continue to be up there in the top, 110-ish range. Should probably be closer to 120, but like he's not 134. So again, like it's not why is he falling? It's when he falls, take advantage, I'm going to do that. Like that is, part of my background here, right? This tree, which is, I don't know, on one of the sides of me, I believe. The decision tree should be one of the biggest ones. Should be the guy at ADP that falls the farthest. And it's not to say that you have to take the faller always, but when it is a guy you like or have higher ranked, like that should be the number one thing, because at the end of the day, the player that scores the most points is scoring the most points. Whether you get a correlation or not, it doesn't matter, right? And so I think if you get a guy like Peterka to fall 20 picks, you're just taking him. Who cares who he correlates with? I went over Buffalo already, but I can show you Peterka after this. Like, I don't know who he's going to correlate with. We don't even, the new head coach, who knows? You know what I mean? So like, I was going to bet on Cousins, but didn't happen. Who cares? Like, I'm fine with it. But like, again, this is how I look into a lot of this stuff. And again, you could look at what we play with on the power play, which is everybody because he doesn't leave the ice. But, just a good way to look at last year and just like teams like Minnesota, I don't think are going to change all that much. A guy like Marco Rossi is at least saw enough run interesting, but I think a lot of that came later in the year. I'm pretty sure you can actually like play, with like the amount of games too you can play with. So you can say like the last 20 games, kind of see how they ended the year, started the year. It's going to take 45 years to load. So I think I'm actually done with that. I should let everyone get out of here. It's been an hour. It's 8:30. I didn't plan on it being on this long, but I'm always happy to do it. And again, if you're wondering more too about like decision tree stuff, I did write an article about it 2 years ago. It was sort of like part one was the decisions you're making. And then part two, you know what? Whatever. Who cares? It's already gone on forever. Let's pull it up. Let's pull it up really quickly. If you're still here, you're still here. If you're leaving, you're left. That's fine. I'm not going to go into detail. I will close out of a bunch of stuff. And I will load this up. I will just show you sort of what I'm talking about. Pillars in the guide. Honestly, I should probably do a whole video on this because it's pretty good stuff. So the first is the 4 pillars of drafting, and I don't think they've changed at all. And I do think Billy did a pretty good job of going over a lot of this in another lens. I did this last year. Just kind of went over. We're back, on the blah, blah, blah. Everyone's having fun. Pillar number 1 is value-based drafting. That is number 1. I don't think it's all that debatable. If you take the guy that you have ranked 80th, that slips whatever 100, you're getting a people. But and I have all the reasons in the math. 2 years old now. It's roster construction. I would almost say that in retrospect, I would call this now draft capital allocation. It's probably the better way to put it. But of course, again, like it's just going over the different constructions, how they fared, why they fared that way. Or this is completely different. Over last, this was 2022 data, not 2023. So again, I should probably update it, but Billy already did a really good job of updating a lot of this. Now 3, most certainly should be, it's players who fit the underdog scoring system. So it's going over players that have a more propensity to shoot, and then correlation. Correlation is the 4th. It's important. It's super important. And hopefully you can find situations where a lot of these line up. But I definitely think that's how I'm always drafting. And you'll see like, you got, this guy after ADP and be correlated. It's like, I care more about the value-based drafting than I care about the correlation, which can get me into trouble. And I do think I'm being more mindful. And these priors have been confirmed again over time, but they've definitely been tweaked here or there a little bit at a time. The second one is kind of what the main crevice of this was, just going in a little bit of depth of the guide of drafting 1 through 4 versus 5 through 12. And when I wrote this in 2022, this was coming off a year that, like, if you did not have McDavid or Matthews, I'm pretty sure you just straight up died. This is 2 years old now, but it's kind of just going over a lot of what I talked about today. And I guess, they're not loading that well. Well, I don't really need to make them huge, but it's just, again, math, data science. And again, I think I kind of covered all of this pretty well already. So there's really no sense in diving back. But it was just going over like waiting on center. If you missed on one of the top 4 centers, again, we had Draisaitl in that camp because, he just came off winning the Best Puck Classic. It was sort of like, don't think you're dead. And now I think it's like, we just learned how live you can be. Like, if you don't get a top 3 pick, it doesn't matter that much. You can definitely still win. So I hope that will help. It's helpful for everyone. And then we're down to 3 people. I should know when to quit. Let's get out of here. I'm going to try to maybe edit this up. I'm going to see what I can do and see what I can learn about editing videos. But yeah, let's get out of here. Enjoy the rest of your night. Go your footballs or whatever. 25 days, and we will be back. And I will be with a bunch of friends at a Sabres play overseas. So thanks for coming along for the ride, and look for a follow-up of like a video. Hopefully I'm going to clip some of this together. Thank you, and have a good one.